name's Adrienne Thomas. I was the maker in residence for the spring 24 session. I was at Harold Washington teaching classes and meeting a lot of great folks, and I'm also going to be creating a piece that will be shared with y'all, and I'm going to be making this video to kind of walk you through a very simplified version of that process so that you can do that style of quilting yourself. The style of quilting that I use to make my exhibited piece is raw edge applique quilting, and so we're going to walk through materials that you can use to help step by step, like prepping, printing, cutting, picking fabrics, etc. I'm not the best with the like face to camera stuff, so a lot of this is going to be from the perspective of like my eyes, but I will be talking along, and I hope this will help get you excited. And if you do end up using this tutorial, please let me know, share what you made, because I think it's just a really cool way to make art accessible and less intimidating. So we're gonna get moving. So what is raw applique quilting? When you hear the word quilt, you probably think of something like this. This, for example, is a quilt that a friend gave me to bind for them, but it is a more traditional quilt. If we look closely, we can see that it's made up of lots of pieces of fabric. They are sewn together individually, and then what they do is they take that top piece, they put a layer of baiting or batting in between it, put a white piece or whatever color you want. In this case, they just use white. It's sandwiched together, and then they quilt the designs. Raw edge applique quilting is a bit different because the edges of each individual piece are not finished. So, for example, here is a little mini wall hanging I'm making for my sister and her dog. If we look closely, we can see that the edges are not finished, but they will not unravel a lot because we use a double stick fusible web to help us go through this process. And so we're going to talk about how we can utilize this technique to make some really cool designs and just kind of open up how we think about quilting. So let's talk materials. The first thing you're going to need is some sort of design that you're drawing. There are some people who sell patterns for this type of applique quilting. You can also make one. And so I want to show you, for example, here is one that I have. I'm going to be trying to make this little cute picture of Lake Michigan. I drew it digitally, that way I can edit and copy. I always like to do a layer of just the drawing and then a layer of the doodle and the colors filled in. That way I can kind of start getting an idea of what fabrics I need, and I use this to pick out fabrics from my stash. The next thing you're going to need, as I shared in the last part, is fusible web. This is Steam-A-Seam Light, and it is by far my favorite fusible web to use. It's really lightweight, doesn't change the feel of the fabric too much, and I really like that because it's double-sided and it's kind of tacky. If I peel this, one side's going to be sticky, and it allows me to put things down and reposition it. The next thing you're going to need are cutting utensils. I use a lot of different scissors and shapes and blades. You don't need this many, but I'm just showing you what I use. You need a to-scale visual of your piece. I like to print mine out and put it together like a puzzle. I will insert a little video on how to do that later on. But you need the pattern piece. You're going to need white quilting cotton, such as this, that is visible, where you can see the lines through the fabric, because you're going to draw these lines directly onto the fabric. You'll need an iron of some sort. It doesn't have to be fancy. Make sure it's an iron. Make sure it can steam. You'll want some sort of writing tools. I tend to just use Sharpies that are fine tipped because it's what I have around the house. If you're worried about mistakes, you can always use something that's washable. But I just use these because generally I only draw directly onto the white fabric that will be covered, and then the individual pieces that will be covered by fabric. So something to draw or write with. Some sort of pattern weights. Those are mine that I had made a bit ago. Some sort of tape. Having quilting needles. These are going to be great for, trying to get to focus. There we go. Going through the multiple layers. I like to use a pair of like really sharp, fine tweezers. And thread, obviously. Alrighty, so what I like to do is once I have my template done, I send it to my computer so I can open it up in Adobe and kind of look at it and figure out what I need to do. Right now, I can see that it is at about, now it's at 100%, so this kind of gives me an idea of the scale, meaning that this is the size each piece would be if I printed it out. I think I'm going to scale it up a little bit more, and so I'm going to show you how to do that and print it. I'm going to upload this template for you. It will not be this grubby. This is just like a really messy sketch that I threw together. I'll make it neater for you to print at home. So I'm going to go ahead and go to menu. I'm going to go to print, where I'm going to be able to size it up to the size I need. Right now it's showing me that if I print it at 100% scale, it'll be spread across 4 pages. I can see it's set up under poster print. But I think I want it a little bit bigger, and so I can adjust the scale based on here. I can print it at 115%. You can now see that it's a few more additional pages. I can print it at 200% if I wanted. As you can see, it's adjusting this as we need. And so what I think I did was I printed at 115 and sent it to the printer. So now that I've printed my guide, I'm going to go ahead and assemble it. Like I said, this is tile printing, and so it will print it like a puzzle that you have to put together. It's really no different than assembling a PDF sewing pattern. And so that is what I'm going to do first here. I like to work left to right first row, left to right second row. So in order to do this, I'm going to need some scissors and some tape, keeping it simple. The first page you don't have to do anything with. And sorry, I'm trying to do this while. So I'm going to start by cutting off the overlapped area. So you can see, I'm just going to follow that all the way down. I have little guides at the end of each. See that? Okay. And now that that's done, I'm going to take it and work on lining it up with the other piece. I can see that there is a little overlap. So now that I'm starting the second row, I'm going to have to cut off the top. So our first step is going to be to lay our quilter's cotton on top of our pattern, and we're actually going to be tracing our pattern onto our fabric. That way we have a guide of where to put each piece as we're working through cutting it. And so I'm just going to start by putting down some little paperweights. Just kind of hold some things in place so when I'm moving around, it's not going to move around a ton on me. Okay, now that I've done that, I just have to literally sit down and trace through the design. So I'm going to start doing that. Okay, so now that I have it kind of laid out on here, I'm going to go ahead and lay this down directly on my table so I can see it. I'm also going to keep this out because I will be using this as I work through the steps to chop everything out. So what I like to do is sort of start by looking at, so I have to unlock this, what maybe like my biggest color is. You want to think of this as you're working your way through it as like layers in like a photo app, right? Like, so we're going to be layering fabrics on top of each other to create the look that we want. And so what I think I want to do is I want to start with the lighter beigey brown colors here to put them in position. That way I can put the blue, which is going to be darker, over top and kind of clean up some of the edges. And so the process of doing this, like I said, this is why I highly suggest using Steam a Seam, is I'm actually going to trace out the shape directly onto my Steam a Seam sheet. So here's what the sheet looks like. So what I'm going to do is use the Steam a Seam to trace the shape that I need, and then I'll be cutting it out and using that to cut out my fabric piece. So I'm going to start with the lighter shade, which is on the outside, and I'm just going to lay my Steam a Seam. I try to really strategically use this so that I don't waste any, but some days you're just going to have those moments where you have larger cuts. And so now that this is laid, I'm going to go ahead and trace over it. Okay. This is one way to cut out your pieces. You trace it right side up. And then once it's traced, you cut out the shape. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so now that the piece is cut out, I'm going to look into my fabric stash and use my guide to help me find a fabric that matches approximately what I would like. Now, you could go in and pick out all your fabrics right away. I like to kind of work on it as I'm going. That way I can kind of see if the tones match up, if there's stuff I need to change. I have some flexibility. So, like I said, I'm going to be peeling off the top layer, which I always like to use a marker because you can kind of see the marks where I drew. That's going to be coming off. This side is now tacky, and I'm going to just lay it down onto the color that I'm using. So, see that? The reason I like to use steam-a-seam versus pretty much any other sticky interfacing is because you can stick things into place without the heat. Eventually we'll heat set it, but I love the flexibility of being able to just kind of plop it down and then cut it out. And so that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to first just kind of get rid of some of the extra fabric around it so that it's really easy to focus on just the piece that I need. There we go. And now I'm going to cut it out. All right, and so now that this is finished, I can see this is the back side. If I was to flip it, I can see that it fits perfectly in this position that I had carved out over here for it. So I'm going to start and I'm going to stick that where it belongs. So I'm going to go ahead and move my guide template, bring my main fabric piece up, and I'm going to lay it directly where it is outlined on our piece. So notice. And this is why I like to work sometimes from lightest to darkest. There's a little blue showing here, but that will be covered up when I put the next layer over it. So that one's done. I'm gonna go in and do the same process. And again, remember, we want to peel this so that the design is sticky side up. That way we can put our fabric on top of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and start to peel this. And sometimes it is a bit tricky. Sometimes the side you don't want to come up will come up. If that happens, I usually will just scratch this. You can kind of see the sticky part to get it stuck. And now that it's stuck on the right side, I can pull this off. And I'm going to go ahead and lay it onto the correct fabric. This is going to fill this space here. Okay, beautiful. I'm going to go ahead and take off the backing. All right, this is a great example. So here you can see I've started to peel this, but the sticky part is not here. So what I'm going to do is I like to just kind of go in a little, and I like to try to just lift the sticky edge up. There we go. See that? Now that it's lifted and separated, I place it against the fabric. And then I should be able to peel the rest off. There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and peel it off. And now I'm gonna place it. So this is one of the biggest reasons I'm a fan of Steam-A-Seam versus any other product, because it is sticky enough that I can stick everything into place before I iron it in. That way, if like something happens or I change my mind, I can just rip, like, look at this. I can just take this off, but it'll stay in place also. So I'm going to do one more part. I'm going to show you another way to cut out the pieces if you don't like the method I just showed you, where you trace the design right side up. This is another option. The other option is going to be, and I tend to use this for more like delicate or intricate pieces. Like this design's kind of wonky. I don't really want to have to cut it out multiple times. And so what I will do is I will go in and trace it right side up like I've been doing. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to move this a bit more so you can see it. I do not want to cut this out once, stick it, and cut it out again. And so what I'm actually going to do instead is flip it. And the thing I like about that is that the paper is thin enough so that when you do flip it and you put it underneath a white piece of paper, let me grab that for us. You can very clearly see the design. It's a little hard in this angle. See that? I'm going to trace over it so I have the design on the back. And I'm also going to label it back. So now that that is there, instead of having to cut it out multiple times, this will allow me to go in and cut it roughly out. And now what I'm going to do, and this is a little different from the last time, is that I am going to plop this down. Again, I always want to make sure the right side is touching the design right side up. So this is going to touch here. That's why I labeled this back. So I'm going to go ahead and peel it. Oh, that's a good one. Ah, there we go. Okay, see, sticky sides here. I'm going to plop it down where I need it. Again, my goal is always like, how much fabric can I save? So this is a little different from last time because now I'm going to cut it out in the reverse. And that way when I flip it, it is the right side up. So I'm gonna go ahead and go in. Just like last time, I like to just cut and isolate the piece I'm working with. Okay, now that I've got it cut out, I can see this fits perfectly there. So I'm gonna go back to my main piece. Now, this was covered up on here, not a big deal. I can approximate it, and that's why I said it's not the end of the world if it's not perfect, but I can kind of see that's about where it needs to be. Hey friends, so I'm still working, but I want to pop in and just kind of show you where I'm at so far. I've pretty much laid all the bottom pieces, and so next I'm going to work on the buildings and then the little bushes, and then I'm done. So I'll come back when I'm finished. Okay friends, I'm back, and the bulk of the piece is done. The only thing I'm missing is the sky, and often when I have things like this where like The sky is going to be one solid background, and even if it wasn't, I probably would make it separate and then add this onto it. So what I'm going to do, out of our way, is I'm actually going to go in and cut all of this out. The benefit of that is, one, I get to clean up some of these like corners, and two, any of the markings that I had left behind will be erased. So I'm going to go in and cut this out and then pick out my background blue, and we'll be done and ready for quilting. Okay, so I finished this first part. Sorry, it was on the floor, so some stuff got on it. I originally had planned for the background to be blue, but I did not really love the way it looked. And so I went into my stash and tried a bunch of other fabrics out, but I also did not like those. And so just for the sake of this video, because I am kind of short on time, I'm going to use this piece. It's a little off-white. It's got some like beigey, brown, yellowy undertones. I would really prefer if it was more on like the cool side instead of warm, but this is what I'm working with for today. And so we're just gonna keep it moving. At this point, I am going to attach this to this using a fusible web. So I'm just literally gonna lay the web on the back, stick it onto here. All right, so now we get to do the fun part of making our quilt sandwich. We first need to lay down the backing of our quilt. In this case, I'm just going to use this gray. Again, iron your fabrics. This is just a little demo. Next, I'm going to need to put down the batting or baiting layer. I know everyone says it differently. And then last but not least, to finish everything off, you're going to sandwich that layer in between the top piece of your quilt. And again, I've cut everything a little longer than it needs to be. Just trying to get this lined up close-ish to the edge. Great. This is about how high I want it anyway, so it kind of works out perfectly. And so now I get to do the fun part of getting to quilting. There's a lot of different ways you could quilt this. Some people like to go over them, like hand stitch everything down. Some folks like, when it comes to quilting, you have a few options. You could go in and change the thread each time you actually stitch and try to stitch the outlines of each piece. You could fill in with stitches that kind of follow the shape. The other style you could do is to just do some straight stitches on your piece. So in this example, I've got the bean in a Chicago style hot dog. You can see that the design is applique quilted and everything is locked in place and ironed. But I just did some straight stitches. I love the texture of this to give the look that I wanted, and same with this hot dog. It's up to you. It just depends on what aesthetic you're looking for. Once that's done, you get to go bind your quilt and so like I was saying, I know that sometimes with a lot of stuff going on in videos, it can get a little overwhelming. And so I just want to show you the 2 ways to trace your piece and get it ready for placing it into place on your fabric. So what I'm going to first just do is draw something random. That way you can kind of see. So I'm going to do, let's just do like a... Okay, so say this is the piece that I would like to copy. Technique number 1. You're going to take your sticky seam. Right now, both sides should have the paper on it. And you're just going to lay it down onto the piece right side up. So in this case, we are tracing it exactly how it's going to look when we lay it down. So now that that's down, I'm going to go in and trace it. Use latches as a big receiver. Way number 1 has me trace the shape, which I've done. I'm going to isolate it by just cutting off the extra seam. All right. So now what this means is when I place it on my fabric, I'm going to take this, because again, I want the right side, so this side, to be touching the right side of the fabric. So see how it's already cut out? I place it down and then I'm going to cut it out. So let's go ahead and do that. So because we want to put this side down, we want to make sure that the tacky part, yeah, perfect on the first try. That's luck. See, this is sticky on this side, and we're taking the one that has the writing off. We're laying it down directly onto the fabric. That was a weird placement. It's not very, it's kind of wasteful. That's all right. And now we can cut it out. I can see now that this is cut out, it actually is a reverse, but when I flip it to stick it down to my pattern piece, it'll be exactly what it needs to be, okay? So that's way 1. I'm gonna go ahead and just take this off so you can kind of see it. Again, sticky side. Boom. Okay. The other way is pretty similar, but there's one difference. You're not going to cut the piece out completely the first time through. So I'm going to lay it down. I'm going to trace it right side up. Once I have it traced once, I'm going to flip it over, trace it again. You can see when I lay it down, it's very easy to see the design. And what doing this allows me to do, label it back, is that this is going to allow me to place this onto the fabric without having cut it out. And then I can cut it out all at the same time. So I'm gonna take this. This is the back. That means the front part needs to get taken off. So let's see if I can get that up. It's always a bit of, oh, perfect. Hey. We're gonna set it down like that. Beautiful. And now we are going to go in and cut this out. Once again, you can see the pieces are still the same shape essentially. I just got to it in a different way. Now that this is done, I could peel this. Let's see if I got the sticky part on. Yeah. And I can lay it down into position. So really the method's your choice. I just want to make sure there was a clear way on how to do either or. I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of the piece and come back and show you when it's finished in our next steps.